My name is Sam Hall, and I'm the client care manager. Probably my most important duty is to oversee the client care staff and the support staff. So I do the scheduling. I make sure that everybody's in the right roles. I make sure that all the operations are running smoothly. Make sure that we have appropriate staffing in place for whatever is going on at the time. And then, a lot of my time is spent working with staff, kind of, more like one-on-one type mentorship type of a role where I work with them to try to work to their strengths and, get them, to be able to, meet the goals that they've made and that we make together. And a lot of the time people start out, they don't necessarily have, life skills in some areas, or they don't have background working with people, right? So we get people that are like, it's a fairly raw product that you're working with in the beginning. And but that's part of what's so great about my job is that I get to see the growth in people, and I get to see, the individuals, whether they're volunteers or staff, start to build their self-confidence and be able to just grow as individuals, right? And so certain people have certain strengths. Some people are good at, they're more organized than others. Some people are really, better at working with people. They might be more empathetic, so it's one of those things where we're really trying to get the best out of people and put them in positions where they can succeed. And then probably a smaller part of my job now than it used to be is working with clients. I don't get to spend as much time with the clients as I used to because I've got a lot of other duties that I'm dealing with. But I do get to spend some time with clients. Generally, unfortunately, it's usually when they've broken rules and things like that. So it's more of a disciplinary type situation. That being said, some of the most rewarding things that can come out of that is that, maybe there's someone that's been struggling with things like the rules and behaviors early on in treatment, but then you see them start to get it, right? You see them start to mature, you see them start to settle down and really become who they actually were before their addiction, right? And so, these are the things we're trying to teach people are just things like accountability, right? And how to be responsible and things like that, right? So when someone starts to get those things, it's pretty cool to watch, the person, see that they're getting better and they're improving, right? It's nice to have that aspect too. So I grew up on the west side of Vancouver, loving family. Unconditional love was shown to me. There was no abuse, and the thing is, it's interesting because, a lot of times there's this misconception that addiction is grown out of, trauma. And it's not that I don't agree with that, but what I struggled with for a long time was there was nothing that I could point my finger to as to why I became an addict. I had a good childhood, right? I think in my situation, it was just environmental, and I, for whatever reason, was drawn to people that were doing dangerous things, exciting things. A lot of the time, those things ended up being, use of drugs and alcohol, and it took me to some pretty dark places. I ended up homeless at one point. I lived on the streets for about a year. And then I was working as, I managed to kind of climb my way out of that hole, but I was still using occasionally and was working as a welder, and I went to school and I became a welder, and I was a journeyman welder, and I was making pretty good money doing that, but I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't getting any meaning and purpose out of that, and to be honest, it was hard to stay sober in that construction field of work, right? And I knew that one of the things that I'd always wanted to do was to work with people, right? So I was fortunate enough to know someone that worked at Together We Can, and while I was in this process of changing careers, I spoke to this person, and they told me that I could come and volunteer here, right? And I did that, and it was life-changing for me, really it was. I remember thinking to myself, this is what I've always kind of been born to do, is to help people, right? Like I'm one of those people that I think that's what my calling is, right? So just kind of worked my way up from a volunteer. I've done most of the positions in the client care and support. And yeah, I mean, I just, through experience, moved into the position I'm in now. I've been in this position for a couple of years now, so yeah. Been in treatment about 4 times, and so what I believe is that, when a person is ready, then they're gonna be ready, right? And up until that point, in my addiction, like I said, I'd been homeless. I'd had external consequences and things like that, and that hadn't stopped me from continuing my addiction. But eventually, I did get to a place where I was just done. Like I'd had enough. I really, like, to my core, had had enough. I was so sick and tired of living that way. I'd wanted to stop for a very long time and had just been unable to. So yeah, I think I was ready. And what I believe is, like, when a person gets to that point and they're that willing and ready, they're actually going to be able to do the work that's necessary to be able to remain sober, right? So I was like desperately wanting to stop that life and wanted to change so badly that I was willing to do what I was told, essentially, right? Because I'd been, like, I think a lot of people, very stubborn and unwilling to do certain things, and I kind of still thought I knew what I was doing, and like I really didn't. I didn't have any idea as far as like being able to control my usage or to stop for any period of time. I was just incapable of doing that, right? So when I finally did come into recovery this last time, I was like a sponge. I was willing to do whatever I was told. I was really, like I said, listening to everything that was suggested to me, and I was fortunate enough to have people that took me under their wing and cared about me, and these were people that I looked up to that were working like very strong programs of recovery, and they shared their experiences with me, and I just kind of followed their lead. You know what I mean? I mean, and instead of me always taking my will back and doing what I wanted, I didn't. I listened, and I did what they said, essentially, right? For a very long time. Like I think it was probably about a year that I did that, right? And even now, like I have those people in my support group, right? And they will tell me if they think that I'm struggling. Like it's like having, the good thing about having a support group is that it's like you have people in your blind spot, right? So I may not necessarily know or see that I'm acting a certain way or I'm behaving a certain way, and I have people around me that care about me that can point it out to me, and I can take their feedback, right? So, yeah. So like I believe that in order to stay sober, I have to have like a program of recovery, right? What does that look like for me? I mean, I go to meetings, right? I have a sponsor that I can talk to. I don't talk to them as much as I used to, but like I think it's critically important for someone in early recovery to have that person, the sponsor, that can take them through. What I did was the 12 steps, and they were able to explain to me like the program and how it works. And when I didn't understand something, because I had tried the 12 steps before and I felt like they didn't work for me. But the thing is that I never had someone that really understood the steps to explain it to me, right? And so you can't do it alone. And I had this person, and they took the time to explain it to me, and I followed their instructions. And like I said, I still work the steps of my life. I think a lot of it's about like principles, right? I'm living like by a certain set of spiritual principles, and I try to follow that like code, right? It's kind of like living by a code. But as far as the program recovery is concerned, like I have a support group around me, and I keep in contact with those people, and they're like I keep the relationship alive by making the calls to them. Like I don't wait for them to call me, because I understand like if I don't have that support around me, I will start potentially drifting to the edge of the program, right? And I want to stay like in the middle of that support, right? So if I stop calling people or I stop staying in touch with people, then when I am really struggling, I'm not necessarily going to have that support around me to be able to point it out to me. And like I said, I have people around me that care about me, that can say to me like, Sam, what's going on, right? Like, you seem like you're depressed, or you're having a hard time, or what's going on? And I can talk to those people. And funny thing is, when you talk about stuff, usually, it takes the power out of it, right? So I try to be of service. I have a position in my home group where I do service work. There's a few different things that I do on a daily basis, and I try to keep it simple. Like I said, if I follow those things, if I do those things on a daily basis, then I don't think I'm going to use, right? But if I stop doing, and this is my experience working in this field, it's the same story every time. When someone comes back into treatment, we ask them what happened, right? And they say, well, I stopped going to meetings, I stopped calling my sponsor, I stopped reaching out. And it's the same thing every time, to some degree, right? So when people are doing those things that I talked about, and living by the principles of recovery, and practicing honesty and being open-minded to things, and remaining willing to do the work on a daily basis, most people that do that, in my experience, are okay. They're able to stay sober, right? So I learned all of this though from people that came before me, right? It's not like I learned this all by reading books or anything like that. It was all passed on to me, right? It's all knowledge that was passed on to me by other people that have followed the same steps that I took, right? And I try to, that's the other thing, I try to pass this on to others now, right? I have a responsibility to pass this on to other people, and to try to help as many people as I can. I mean, I think there's been a few instances that I can think of. I'm somebody that likes to take on projects. That's how I think of them anyway, right? Sometimes it's the people that struggle the most, right? But the thing is, like most people, these are genuinely good people, right? And they, for whatever reason, I see them struggling and I want to help them, right? And whether they get vulnerable about it or whatever it is, something about it will usually, and they want help. That's the other thing that's really important, right? They want the help, and they're willing to take the feedback, right? If someone's not willing to listen or take suggestions, then I'm probably not going to want to waste my time. But there's one person that I can think of that they had a lot of behavioral issues when they were in treatment. They were breaking rules, they were acting out in different ways. But again, I know this person's background, right? This person came from a lifestyle of, crime and gangs and prison and things like that. And, so it's, you learn behaviors through that, right? You're not going to change that overnight, right? And this person wanted to change, right? They wanted to change those behaviors, but it's not that simple, right? They, just because they wanted to stop doing things didn't mean they were going to stop doing things, right? So I work with this person, and a lot of it was around accountability, right? And honesty, and taking ownership for things when they did something, right? Instead of blaming others and things like that, right? And not rationalizing and being in denial about things, trying to be completely honest with themselves about what their motives were for certain things and things like that. And gradually, I saw a change in this person, and this person now is a successful person. They're working at a successful job, they're in school, and they're back kind of where they were before their addiction started, right? I mean, they finished university and then started the drugs and things like that, and so all of that stuff got put on hold, right? But now, like I said, they're successful, and they are also now helping other people, right? And so it's kind of like a tradition of trying to pass on what we can get from this program to others, right? So other people can share that with other people, and there's a lot of people suffering out there right now, right? There's a lot of pain and suffering going on, and if we can help the people that want it and that are willing, then we got to try, right? So, yeah. I don't know if there was one moment, but I think there was probably a series of moments where I was in a vulnerable place, and I asked for help, right? And was willing to receive that help, and the person or the persons that I asked for help, basically were willing to give freely of their time. And these are busy people, right? We're not talking about people that have nothing to do. They're busy people, and they took time out of their busy day to work with me on the steps, right? And so those types of things mean a lot, right? Like when somebody is extremely busy, you know how busy they are, but they're stopping and they're gonna spend an hour, 2 hours with you working on recovery, right? Like those are like meaningful things. And I think, so it's not usually just one thing. I think it's usually one of those things where we try to instill in people like an understanding of the fact that like, we can't just like take this gift that's given to us and then just not share it, right? Like if we can help people that we're helping to understand that they then have to help other people. Like it is a duty that they then go and help others. It's not like we help people and then they just don't help other people, right? So I think the ripple that you're talking about is happening because when people are working with other people and they're helping them, they are making sure that they understand that they need to then share that, right? And that's why it's like a growing pool of people like getting better, and then as they get better, they're helping the next sick and struggling person, right? So it's not, I don't necessarily think it's one thing that you can point to, although sure, I'm sure there's times and places where someone might say something and like I can remember being told things and the people explaining things to me, and the light bulb kind of went on my head, right? And I was like, oh, okay, you know? So those things do happen, but I don't think there's one specific instant usually that changes everything, you know? Yeah. I don't know if I'm like that fun of a person, to be honest with you. I'm a pretty serious person. I like to joke around with my colleagues and stuff like that. One of the things that I love about TWC and this family that we have here, because it's a family, is that we joke around, right? Like, and I don't know whether it's gallows humor, I don't know what you want to call it, but we have this kind of sense of humor where it's like, you see a lot, right? You see a lot working with people, you see a lot of good and bad, and if you don't keep that sense of humor about you and you don't have the ability to like kind of let some of that stress off with your colleagues, then I think that's when people start burning out and stuff like that. So there's no like necessarily like fun facts that I'm going to share with you, but yeah, I like to joke around with my colleagues, and yeah, man, like I love what I do. I love what I do. You know, as much as it can be really stressful and there's a lot of pressure and things like that, it's very rewarding, right? It's very rewarding, and I'm very grateful that I get to do what I do.